They are making a difference on 938 Live.
The ASEAN Youth Volunteers Program, or AYVP, is a dedicated youth volunteerism platform that intends to create opportunities in knowledge-driven volunteerism so as to enhance cross-cultural understanding and forge a sense of regional identity while making a sustainable difference to communities across ASEAN. Over the next 2 days on They Are Making a Difference, I talked to 2 Singaporean participants who represented the National Environment Agency. First up, I understand Nazeera Mohammed's experience at the AYVP.
The program revolves around community engagement and sustainable development pertaining to culture and heritage preservation. So for my group, in my case, there were several sites, but we were mainly focused on Kuala Lumpur and Malacca. So for my group, it was with regards to the Indian community. So we went to the Little India site in Kuala Lumpur and also the Chetty community in Malacca. So what we did was we engaged with the people living in these areas and asked them with regards to the risks that were related to no succession, with regards to the traditional enterprises that were there, the buildings, the older buildings being surrounded by urban development and things like that.
So what did they think were the biggest risks they were facing?
We discovered 3 main problems. The first one being rapid urban development, of course. There are particularly for Kampung Chetty in Malacca, right, you can see high-rising buildings surrounding the village. So it posed as a threat because people wouldn't probably be able to realize that there is a village over there. And that village is largely consisting of the Chetty community in Malacca, which is a minority and a very unique one at that. So another problem is that there is no succession. The younger generation is not very interested in these things. But we discovered through the engagement that we had that the problem that led to this was because there was a lack of compromise between the older generation and the younger generation. There was no collaboration between the 2 generations. So succession and urban development are the 2 biggest problems.
So take us through exactly what makes the Chetty community so unique and why are they facing succession problems? Is it in terms of population or in terms of maintaining the culture?
Let me clarify. Specifically for the Chetty community, urban development was a bigger problem compared to succession. Whereas for the Little India community in Malacca, succession was a bigger problem. I mean, when you walk through the streets, you immediately start to question whether this is Little India or not because there is that lack of identity to it. As for the Chetty community, the problem with regards to succession is that we were greeted by the sort of the executive community of the village, and you can see immediately that there are older people manning the community board, there are also younger people. But in terms of involvement, the older generation were much more interested to sort of engage with us. We did our various activities with them. We split into several groups like cleaning the temple or cooking. It was mainly the older generation that handled us. Whereas for the younger generation, I remember while we were having lunch, these 2 young gentlemen came up to us and told us to like the Chetty Malacca Facebook page, and that was it. And when we checked out their Facebook page, it wasn't regularly updated.
And exactly what makes the Chetty community so unique?
They're actually a combination of 2 ethnic groups. There is the Malay ethnic group and the Indian ethnic group. So a lot of people confuse them as Malay because they speak Malay, but they're actually Indian by ethnicity. Although they do not speak Tamil, their Indian roots are very strong, and a lot of people mistake them as Malays just because they speak Malay largely, yeah.
So beyond discovering these risks, Nazeera, when you got there, did you have any solutions for them or any suggestions as to how they could improve their situation?
What we realized is that there's this gap which led to the lack of awareness and appreciation with regards to culture and heritage. Because while the older generation may have had their ideas to do certain things, the younger generation are not willing to sort of understand the reasons behind wanting to do things a certain way. And the older generation, on the other hand, are not willing to appreciate, for example, technological involvement as to how they can create awareness regarding culture and heritage. For example, when we were in Little India, Malacca, the uncles were mentioning that, the younger generation want to continue this business at 70 years old or 80 years old, something like that. And then we were thinking about how if we were to ask the younger generation to sit down with them and realize that a lot of effort has been put into run this business over the years. It's not just something that happened overnight. Then perhaps they would be able to appreciate it, and also to incorporate new age elements like maybe you can promote the business through social media. Maybe you can promote the business through websites, for example.
Did you suggest any activities, for example, any tourist-related activities that would also be economically viable for the younger generation to take on to make it more attractive to them to actually preserve the generational businesses?
I think in Little India, Kuala Lumpur, there is a temple. It's not exactly a temple. It's a building that promotes fine arts with regards to the Indian culture. So it's called the Temple of Fine Arts, and it's been running for a long time, from generation to generation. And we suggested that perhaps the national schools in Malaysia could incorporate like a co-curricular activity that requires them to learn a little bit of each culture, including the Indian culture, and utilizing what the Temple of Fine Arts can provide for the schools as a point of like initiation and awareness to the community that there is such an effort, there is such a building and initiative to promote fine arts in Indian culture and community. So perhaps we can have their graduates to perform in national events in Malaysia and things like that to sort of put their name out there.
Do you know if any of these ideas will be implemented?
There were a couple of Malaysians in my group. I'm not exactly sure if they have it in mind to continue and pursue these ideas, but I'm planning to incorporate what I've learned into what I can do for Singapore.
And how do you intend to do that?
When we were attending this particular lecture on culture mapping, there was a comment that was made about the Singaporean culture and heritage and that there's a dying spirit that's attached to it. And I disagree with that because a lot of us younger people tend to just immediately agree to that without actually going on the ground to speak to the people and realize that it's very much alive. It's just that these voices are not heard enough. So it's very easy to say that the culture and heritage in Singapore is dying because you see, we're a fast-moving society. Everything's moving so quickly. But if you actually slow down and sit down with the people who've actually pioneered certain things in Singapore's culture and heritage phase, you'll realize that these people actually want to put forth whatever they've started. It's just that there's not much engagement, there's not much interaction with these people, and a lot of them are older, are from the older generation, so we tend to sort of forget them.
And that was Nazeera Mohammed, who represented the National Environment Agency at the AYVP. This has been They Are Making a Difference. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Daphne Lim.
They are making a difference on 938 Live.